our being in debt is not by default. We were set up by the system to be in debt. If you are paying 8 times, the chances of you being saddled with debt are 8 times higher than the next person. So how do we get out of this? Our suggestion is that before we leave here, let us agree, let us have a consensus on a win-win. The multilateral development banks have shareholders. Those shareholders cannot allow them to make certain decisions. So it's okay. So how do we keep the shareholders happy? Let us tell them, we will pay our debts. Give us 10 years or 15 years grace period and make the debt a 50-year loan. And we stop not paying the money we are supposed to pay next year. And they give us 10 years. What will happen is immediately the resources that we were supposed to pay for debt servicing become available to us to sort out the immediate issues. I'll give you an example. In Kenya, we are paying $5 billion every year to service our debts. If we got an opportunity not to pay the $5 billion, and it is made available to us to provide water, to provide electricity, to do development, we would have money at scale. And if it was done for 10 years, and we are given 20 years grace period, we would be sorted. And everybody will be happy. We will still pay our debt. It has just been postponed. So the shareholders have no problem. And we have immediate money to deal with our situation, so we are also not doing. Hopefully, before we leave here, we have that agreement. I don't think it is unfair for us to ask. And I think it is a win-win. That's number one. Then we will go into the journey of reforming the multilateral development banks. We will even transform them. And I agree with Motley, it is possible for us to raise $500 billion to be able to plug into the gap that our restructuring of 10, 20 years or 50 years creates. So we can do that. It's so simple. Number two, our next expectation, so that we can have a better conversation in Nairobi, is to agree on climate financing. I know to a great extent what I have suggested as number one will go to a good extent in climate financing. But if we have to deal with the climate financing in the context of what we agreed in 2015, in the consensus we built out of the Paris Agreement, this Paris Agreement, where we get emissions down by 45% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. If we were to go there, IEA, which Kenya just became a member, tells us that we need $9.2 trillion every year for us to get to net zero by 2050. We have a gap of $3.5 trillion. How do we raise $3.5 trillion to be able to close that gap? And I'm very sympathetic to what you said. Let us have a global financing mechanism. Loss and damage will not do it. I'm sorry. It will not do it, because loss and damage is hostage to national interest. No nation is going to give money from its people to sort out a global problem. Because in a contest between national interest and global good, national interest wins in the morning. That's it. So what we did, and that is why we are not making progress ever since Paris in 2015, is because we had a global consensus on a global problem called climate change, but we tried to go and sort it out. We tried to sort it out using national institutions that are hostage to national interest, or we tried to use shareholder institutions that have shareholders who will make the decision finally. So we must get a new financial architecture around climate financing. And we are saying we want one that does not bring the baggage and the toxic conversation of North versus South. We do not want a conversation that is going to take us to developing versus developed, emitters versus non-emitters. No. The rest of us from the African continent, we've always been in the corner of problems and victimhood. We don't want to be in that corner anymore. We want to be at the table where we are all looking for solutions. That is why we are in this conference. We have not come here to complain to anybody. We've come here because we want to look for a solution. We want to come up with a win-win. How are we going to arrive at a win-win? We already have suggestions on the table. IMF has proposed what they call carbon flow tax. The only challenge they have is that they have said it must be ratified by every country. I have a problem with that. We can have a carbon tax that is agreed as a treaty, and there is a way we can agree on it. The European Parliament have agreed on the financial transaction tax. We do not want to be the business of the Europeans. We want a global financial transaction tax where even us from the African continent, we pay. We want to pay. We want others to pay for us. So that once we raise the money globally, once everybody pays, if it is 1%, let all of us pay 1%. So that we can sit at a table, so that there are no shareholders. When IMF and World Bank were created in Bretton Woods in 1945, Kenya did not exist. It was only 44 countries then. Today, we have 190 countries. We want to contribute so that we can sit on the table and make the decisions so that we are not paying 8% more than others. Let us agree to pay the aviation tax. We have no problem. Let us agree on the shipping tax, and we want to pay. We don't want anybody to pay for us. We want to pay our percentage. It is only when we raise global finances that have no national interest for any particular country or shareholder interest of any person. That is how we are going to sort out this global challenge. Many people ask, so who is going to collect this money? So how is this going to happen? And let me dare say the following. After the Second World War, 44 countries, 740, I think 44 delegates sat in a small city called Bretton Woods the World Bank and IMF did not exist. They created it in 3 weeks. The agreement was done in 3 weeks. Why is it difficult for us? Because there was, the whole of Europe had been destroyed. And so it was urgent and it was important for a decision to be made. Are we saying the crisis that we are going through, including what we just heard from the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is not serious enough for us to agree on a global financing mechanism that sorts out climate change as a problem that is affecting all of us? Are we saying ever since 1945 we have become stupid? Is that what we are saying? Or we have become less human? That we have no more feelings about what's going on? And many people are saying maybe we should do this incrementally. Maybe we should. Let me finally put this in context. The Bretton Woods institutions were agreed in 3 weeks. The UN that we today celebrate was a conversation by 50 countries in 2 months. Because it was necessary. Because there were leaders that wanted and had the capacity to make decisions. Are we saying that we are incapable of making the decisions that are required of us as leaders in the context of where we are today? I dare say between Paris and Nairobi, we have more than 3 weeks that were necessary to form the World Bank and IMF. We have more than 2 months that were necessary to agree on the UN Charter. We have actually 3 months. So my expectation is that we will agree in Paris and we will conclude in Nairobi. You asked me about my expectation. That's my expectation, that we will put this together. And please, for heaven's sake, we want a win-win outcome. We are tired of the blame game, finger pointing, north versus south, on this subject of climate change. There is no developed, there is no developing. We are all in trouble. And let me finalize by saying the following. And that is why it is necessary and urgent for us to make the decision now is that we are not in the right trajectory. When we agreed in Paris in 2015 to reduce emissions by 45% by 2030, what has happened? Today, Europe has done very well. You have reduced emission by 25%, by 20%. OECD countries have done well. You have reduced emissions collectively by 12%. But because the rest of the world don't have the money to do it, emissions have gone up elsewhere by 37%. So what happened to the 20% down in Europe? And what happened to the 12% down in OECD? Nothing happened, because overall, on average, the emissions went up by 17%. So we are not doing well. We are not going in the right direction. We are going backwards. So it is urgent that we all agree on how to to go forward. And why specifically do we need to target taxing fossil fuel? Because it is the fuel, it is what is contributing 73% of all global gas emissions that are causing trouble in our globe. That's why we must go there. And that is the difficult conversation we must have, and we must have it in this Paris meeting and summit. Thank you very much.
I think that President Ruto brought it all home. The reality is that we're all in this together. And our failure to recognize that, or to recognize that each person must share the burden, each country must share the burden, we have to transform how we live, we have to transform how we do business. And the ball now is in the court of each of these countries. The political will has to be there to instruct our directors wherever they're found in the multilateral institutions, and we need to talk truth to our populations. This world is in trouble, and unless we rise to the occasion, we will sink together. Thank you.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
The political will is here. We are sure, and also the positive attitude, because we have a lot of things to do, and we have to be positive also. This is, the stress is a lot. We see that the young generation, they worried about their future, about the globe. So absolutely, you have right, President Ruto. The challenges are global, but also the solutions are global. So thanks very much. And I think that after tomorrow, when we are going to leave Paris, we have to leave Paris with a clear roadmap, and we have all of us to work to build coalition if we want to change. And of course, I hope that when we will come in Nairobi, we'll have less job, and, but we have many, I think that we have a lot of work for the 2 months, but also for Marrakesh, as you said, President. We have Delhi, and we have COP28. You see, we need this leadership, and we need this energy of all of you. And we don't have to stop, and we have to continue. Thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership, for your ideas. Thank you.
bienvenue à Paris. Welcome to
Welcome to
Paris for this panel. It's the end of the day. You may be a little bit exhausted, but it's a great panel. Not only because of the participants, we all know and appreciate, but also because of the topic. I would not say that without our roundtable, all other roundtables would be irrelevant. It would be a little bit exaggerated, but to reach the objectives for MDBs, for the IMF, for the private finance, one thing is indispensable: the right data. Not because we are obsessed by data, but first of all, we heard very often, yeah, we would like to act, but we don't have the data. So we need to provide the good data, so we withdraw excuses. But even more, because as we learned this morning with the great roundtable we had, the needs in front of us are so huge. If we want to allocate properly resources, we need to know where we put the money. We need to make sure that it is useful for transition. We need to make sure that it is actually going to protect nature. We don't want to encourage greenwashing. So that's the reason why all these tools, which may seem a little bit abstract, are quite important for finance. And there is sometimes the idea floating around that, you know, this is a luxury good for Westerners and we can afford to spend time to elaborate sophisticated tools. But I don't think so. And you know that the summit, the purpose of this summit is to leave no one behind, to allow all countries to develop and at the same time to respect the Paris agreements and limit the increase in temperature. So we have the best possible panel here to discuss this topic, and I thank you all very much. I'm not going to introduce in order to save time. You know the speakers, just say a word. So Mark, you will have the floor first. You are well known for what you did for climate. I remember not only your speech in 2015, but also your fantastic book where you insisted on values we share and not values. So where are we? You chair GFANS. You made the efforts to mobilize trillions in the private sector. So please tell us where we are and on climate. And we will also add biodiversity.
Very good. It is a great honor to be here and to be on the panel with my colleagues and particularly you, Sylvie, given everything you've done. So I'm going to speak for a few minutes on data and system change. And I just want to capture how the system is being changed and the role data is playing in. So, and I think you're not overstating it to say at the foundation, of course, is data. First point, though, is to just underscore why we need a new financial pact. Look, this requires a revolution in finance because we are having an economic revolution which is as large as the Industrial Revolution and at the speed of the digital revolution. And when we had the Industrial Revolution, everything changed. We had new types of banking, fractional reserve banking. We had new types of central banking, lender of last resort. We had a new international monetary system, the gold standard. And that was all necessary for the capital and scale. We need banks focused on carbon. We need central banks focused on stress tests, central banks slash supervisors, and we need a new international financial system that builds on that in order to get the capital to where it's needed most, which is in the emerging developing world. So that the first point. Second, in order to get there, we have had the objective, Sylvia, you and I have worked hard with Mary and others on this, such that every financial decision takes climate change into account. In other words, it's always a consideration when making a loan, when making investments. Sometimes it's decisive, sometimes it's one of many factors. But in order to be there, you need clear, comparable, decision-useful disclosure. Mary Shapiro is no one better to speak to this in the TCFD, and of course David on the TNFD with respect to nature and biodiversity. As well, you need central banks and supervisors who challenge the banks and insurers to think about what will happen if they stay on their current course. And they do that through stress testing and supervision, and Sabine can speak to that and many other things through the NGFS, which basically covers the entire global financial system now, to its great credit, and a great initiative of the Banque de France. As well, this isn't all just about risks, it's about enormous opportunities. It follows that if you're solving an existential problem, you create enormous, your solution will create enormous value, so values and values right there, and that's part of the reason why you've seen such coalitions come together to act on this. Countries and the youth and others express the demands. We do act. So, just to move towards conclusion, one of the core points is in order to move, you need a plan. Not just an objective, but a plan. And one of the things we've been doing at GFANZ, along with authorities that are moving forward, has been to develop a consistent, comprehensive approach to transition planning for financial institutions and what their expectations are of companies and countries for their plans there. That was developed, it was released for COP27. It's now being implemented by the 575 members of GFANZ, the $150 trillion of capital. And I want to finish up on what authorities can do in order to truly unlock this potential. So you have this data, you will have transition plans. You need it consistent across entities. So, and Catherine has helped lead on this, the expectation should be that it's mandatory. Certainly in the developed economies, it should be mandatory amongst sophisticated financial institutions and companies. In emerging and developing economies, it should be tailored. And many of these transition plans actually will be at the country level, JETPs, country platforms, taking into account the unique circumstances and energy transitions there. We need the multilateral development banks and the authorities to help drive that. So I'll finish just underscoring this point. We've got, I think, we've identified the data we need. We're building the core base. We need the plans that act on that data. And then with political will, we can help leverage this finance we have.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mary Shapiro, I move to you. We don't need to introduce you neither. And I would say you are the mother of TCFD, and you inspire all of us. Last year, President Macron and Michael Bloomberg created the Climate Data Steering Committee you are chairing. And now you are working at a strange animal called NZDPU. To put it simply, it's repository where... Tell us a little bit more. You told me it's not one more thing. So there is a coherence in all these efforts we are doing. And you consider, and I'm so glad, that all the efforts done by the people on this step are interconnected. So please, Mary, explain us why you see it this way.
That's exactly. But first of all, thank you for organizing the panel, but most importantly for your leadership on climate issues over many years. You know, it's actually become a cliche at this point that you manage what you measure, but actually in the world of climate finance, we've really seen over the past few years how important it is that we address the data challenges if we want to see action at the scale that's necessary to honor the goals of the Paris Agreement. So we know we need better data to ensure that all institutions can actually understand their climate risk and report those and their climate impacts. We need better data to ensure that financial institutions can scale transition finance and seize the opportunities of the transition. We know that all stakeholders need to be able to measure progress against those net zero commitments that they've made, and we need data to equip supervisors and policymakers with better understanding of both institution-specific and system-wide risks from climate change. So, as you mentioned, I'm here today with several hats on, and this is going to sound like real alphabet soup. Chair of the Climate Data Steering Committee, or CDSC, which is overseeing the development of the NZDPU, or the Net Zero Data Public Utility. We have, Mark has spoken to GFANS, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, and of course the TCFD, or the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. In addition, I think up here we have the